I'm sorry to tell you this, but you've been diagnosed with liking dinosaurs. To celebrate the new big dinosaur movie coming out, it is time to do a weird matchup. I'm gonna fully admit that. I'm gonna be seeing if the Rhedosaurus from the Beast from 20,000 Phantoms can survive. Obviously, Rebirth is not out. I haven't seen Rebirth. I cannot see Rebirth because this is literally being filmed before it comes out. I can't do anything, dog. I'm sorry. But I can do the other islands. I can see how he compares to the other dinosaurs, and I can see if he survives, if he, dies to a raptor. What is it? What's going to happen, right? Well, today, we're going to see exactly that. So, let us start off with, well, the newcomer and the person you probably don't know that well, the Rhedosaurus, or as he's more widely known, the Beast. Now, he was an ancient dinosaur that was awakened by a nuclear bomb. So, safe to say, he is quite formidable. Now, getting into strength and speed, well, it was able to charge through a building and completely pulverize this building. It is said that it could be around 8.8 tons of TNT or large building level. Now, this is also supported considering it was able to rather easily destroy a lighthouse. So it's safe to say it's quite strong. Now, getting into speed, it was able to swim from the Antarctic to New York in a very, very, very fast time frame. And on top of that, it was able to dodge a old-fashioned bazooka shot. This direct variant, though, was clocked at around 80.7 meters per second, or subsonic. Now, the Rhedosaurus should be moving at least similar to that, considering it is an animal. It doesn't necessarily have the ability to aim dodge, so this would have to be genuine reaction time, or the army is incompetent aim. And considering it is a monster movie, it could be both, but for now, it is quite fast, and I think putting it at that speed would be a very likely scenario. Now, moving into any special abilities, uniquely enough, it is a quadruped, and its last ability is its poisonous blood, which is said to contain diseases from its time on ancient Earth, which humans are not immune to. Well, cool, they were from the time of the dinosaurs. I don't know if you guys know this, but Spinosaurus is a dinosaur. T Rex, dinosaur. Indominus Rex, also a dinosaur. So, well, not technically, it's technically a hybrid, but you get what I mean. They should at least have some immunity to it. So, while its only real advantage is its quadrupedal stance and its enormous size and weight, those are still two notable advantages. But we're going to see how the general carnivores of Jurassic World compare. So, starting off, we have the Raptors, and they're kind of fodder. Maybe you can argue that they're able to cut, say, the Spinosaurus's skin. The Spinosaurus was able to break through a fence. That was around 0.0005 tons of TNT. That's about wall level. Raptors should be relatively able to harm at least the Spinosaurus in that aspect, so you could argue that they are at that level. And if enough of them gang up on a creature, it is a notable threat. However, they obviously do not have any durability feats, considering they get pierced by normal bullets, they get chomped in half by the T-Rex, and so on and so forth. So it's safe to say that they don't necessarily have what it takes, even if a bunch of them were to gang up. Now, getting into the larger theropods, a low to mid end for the carnivores, we have Rexy Bite AP, which should clock in at around 0.3 tons of TNT, which is notable, which means that the Rhedosaurus should be at least 29 times stronger. So, safe to say one headbutt from the Rhedosaurus is going to completely shatter bones of Rexy, and most likely its bites would be on a similar caliber to its charges. Now, There is also the chance of it rearing up on its hind legs, similar to a sauropod, and crushing it with its enormous weight, which would work on most creatures in this instance. And I started off with Rexy because, as Rexy does not have notable appendages, she is just using her head. She will most likely try to bite and headbutt the Rhedosaurus, which will leave her extremely vulnerable. And she will not be able to shove the Rhedosaurus at all, leading her to essentially hitting a brick wall. Except the brick wall can bite back. So, yeah. Rexy, unfortunately, I started off with her. She does not make it against the Rhedosaurus. Now, moving on to the Giga, very similar boat. While the Giga is physically the strongest of all of the large carnivores in the series, that could change with the D-Rex, I do not know, but it is the strongest. This still will not help it after all. Even if you highball it to, say, the Mosasaurus's bite attack potency, that still comes out to around 2.1 tons of TNT. To put into perspective, this only means the Rhedosaurus is only 4 times stronger than the Giga. Wow. Now, while I do concede that it is a notable jump up, there is a chance of the Giga getting in a lucky shot. However, once again, the quadrupedal stance would most likely affect the way a Giga has to engage this creature, just due to the fact that it can't knock it over, in which case it will not have an easier time biting it. If it tries to outmaneuver it, it's going to have to go near its massive tail, which was not used as an actual weapon in the movie. However, it can be used to notable effect. After all, it is a tail. You just smack someone with it. And while both these characters are animalistic, that means they will not be fighting with a large amount of strategy, meaning that it does come down to raw power, durability, and speed. And the Rhedosaurus being essentially 8 times faster and 4 times stronger, it's just going to beat the Giga. Even if Giga gets maybe a lucky shot in. Now, moving into the Spinosaurus, it is a very similar boat. However, the Spinosaurus notably does have arms, which would at least allow it a different field of advantage compared to the Rhedosaurus. Also, the Spinosaurus can engage it in the water. Now, in this instance, this would actually put it at a disadvantage just due to the fact that, while the Rhedosaurus can most likely swim faster than the Spino, and it once again is much heavier. It's the equivalent of trying to fight a blue whale, except that blue whale also has the bite force of a T-Rex, essentially. So, even for a water engagement, Spinosaurus would still most likely lose. And while it does seem to be at least a little bit more intelligent than, say, the Giga, it would not be enough to necessarily help on in a time of need, and it most likely would just get run over once again. Now, this is the final matchup. Rhedosaurus versus the Indominus Rex. Why did I put the Indom here? It's because the Indom is the best matchup for this creature. Not in the sense of it is the strongest, but safe to say the Indominus would have the best advantage just due to the fact that the Indominus is incredibly smart. It has a versatile way of abilities. It can camouflage. It can, detect heat. All of its senses are enhanced beyond all comprehension, and it is directly stated to be stronger than Rexy. Now, you could argue that that was not prime Rexy, but still, it is notable to say. So, you could argue that the Indom does have large building level AP. After all, it did tank a bite attack from the Mosasaurus, and that was also after it got into a scuffle with a T-Rex and a Velociraptor. And also, Owen was technically shooting his gun. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's still there. And it's safe to say that the Indom is incredibly strong and versatile. And the reason it has the best matchup is because it would most likely understand what it needs to do in order to take the Rhedosaurus down. What does it need to do? Well, it needs to use its camouflage and heat-seeking vision, or thermal vision, my apologies, and successfully target its vital organs, such as the neck, the underbelly, things of the sort, without without the Rhedosaurus being able to tag and smash it. Now, obviously, since it is only 4 times stronger, since it should at least have the durability to survive a Mosa bite, that should mean that the Rhedosaurus should take more than 1 or 2 hits to kill it. So, the Indom would be able to run around slashing it, clawing it. It might attempt to gouge out an eye or something of the sort. Now, once again, with its quadrupedal stance, that is going to make it very difficult for the Indom, and it will mean that it is a much more stable attacker, whereas Indom was able to force Rexy to fall over onto the ground, allowing her to get multiple bites in around Rexy's neck. It is important to note that will not be happening with the Rhedosaurus. So while I do think the Indom would have the greatest chance against the Rhedosaurus, it most likely would just die against it, right? Now, there is the possibility of it getting those said lucky shots and the Rhedosaurus completely fumbling. However, if I'm going to be real, Rhedosaurus most likely, as soon as the Indom gets its first bite in, if the Rhedosaurus is able to tag it or claw it or do whatever, that is going to severely injure or at least slow down the Indom. And if it is stunned by a heavy attack, well, the Rhedosaurus is going to charge in, bite it, crush it, something of the sort, leading to a sweep. And yes, I will acknowledge that the Rhedosaurus is, as soon as it enters Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, it is most likely the most powerful carnivore we have seen. The only exception to that could be the Mosasaurus, and this is our final bonus matchup. And this is kind of a mess. So, we do not necessarily have a swimming speed of the Mosasaurus, but since there's no way to quantify it, you could once again say that it is, anywhere around the same speed as the Jurassic World carnivores, just for consistency's sakes, which would put it at around 11 meters a second swimming speed, which means the Rhedosaurus is still 8 times faster. Then you add into the fact that the Mosasaurus bite low end should be around 2.11 tons of TNT. Its high ends should be around 9, I believe, meaning that the Mosa would most likely be able to severely injure the Rhedosaurus if it were to bite down on it. However, the Rhedosaurus is, believe it or not, a very good swimmer. As I stated prior, it was able to swim from Antarctica to New York in a short amount of time. That is a very, very interesting speed, and so that does mean it is very proficient in the water. Now, this is the first time that the Rhedosaurus would encounter something that is bigger than it. However, once again, 500 tons is a substantial amount of weight, so there is a chance that it could swim on top of the Mosasaurus and let its body weight almost push it down further into the depths. Now, would that necessarily benefit it? Is hard to say. After all, the Mosasaurus would be able to hold its breath for an incredibly long period of time, but at the same time, the Rhedosaurus most likely can as well. So, overall, this is a toss-up, but once again, I think that the Rhedosaurus being able to move faster would indefinitely help it in taking down the Mosasaurus, and it being able to chomp at the bits, slowly whittling this massive creature down, would eventually lead it to getting a victory. However, this is the closest matchup, I would say, in the entire Jurassic World franchise. So, overall, I would say that the Rhedosaurus versus Jurassic World is kind of close. But, hey, that's what I think. Don't worry, guys. If this video does well, I might make Rhedosaurus versus the D-Rex, just to give you guys an extra little treat. Anyway, I've had a great time talking about dinosaurs. I hope you did too. And this is Rox signing off. Also, it beats Indom 2.0. Sorry, not sorry. Power scaling go burr. And that thing took a nuclear warhead, so Dinobite do nothing. Catch you later.